Hi there, what's up? Recently DICE put out the 5 last specialists that will be available in the Battlefield 2042 release. This did add quite a bit to the uproar in the community regarding specialists. I presented them just briefly on the stream the other day, but after watching them a bit more, I feel that I want to dive a little bit deeper into the subject. In this video, I'm going to start by presenting what specialists are, who the new 5 specialists are, and what abilities they have. And finally, I'm going to give my view about why this may or may not be a concern for Battlefield 2042. Now, if you don't want to go through it all, feel free to use the timeline below. I've marked all the parts so you should easily be able to find what you are looking for.
Remember, this is bigger than us.
Specialists are something new to Battlefield 2042 and a bit different from the class system that we have grown accustomed to in previous Battlefield games. DICE has explained that they created a specialist based on the old class system. Every specialist has a unique speciality and trait, but the rest of the loadout is fully customizable. Usually specialists have an active ability like the grappling hook of Mackay and more or less a passive ability like Nimble. The active ability is something that the player has to trigger and do knowingly, while the passive ability just happens without any trigger from the player. Nimble for Mackay means that he moves faster while adds. The player of course needs to actually use adds, but the difference in moving faster compared to other specialists happens automatically. Now that we know what the special is, let's have a look at the Hateful 5. Navin Rao is a hacker. His speciality is the cyber warfare suit, allowing him to scramble enemy vehicle systems, disable ranges or activate different systems remotely. He has the Trojan network ability, which allows him to hack into enemy systems for valuable intel. As shown in the video, this means right now that he can hack an enemy with the Trojan network, and if that hack is followed up with a kill, enemies nearby to the victim will be spotted. Since Rao is exposed while hacking, I consider this a risky move, but we'll see when we can actually test it. Exactly how powerful this is will be highly dependent on the range of the spots, how long time it sticks. First thought though is that it can probably be quite useful in the hazard zone, but maybe not that much in Conquest. The cyber warfare suit also allows Rao to remotely hack systems. In the video it's shown by lowering and raising poles to allow a friendly to pass while the enemy gets stuck. Such moments will probably end up as only in Battlefield moments, but I don't really think that it's going to be useful for the normal chaotic fast-paced game that we usually experience. But we haven't seen what can be triggered on the different maps yet. The beta had no working way of hacking or disturbing electrical systems, even if the drones look like they should have been capable of EMPs. Santiago, Espinosa or Dozer. Or the bad guy stealing dog tags in the trailer. Dozer has the ballistic shield ability, and if that wasn't enough, he is also blast resistant. Basically, this dude is a human tank that I think will be quite painful to handle. I've only played around shields a few times in previous Battlefield games, but I sure remember when it was introduced in Counter-Strike 1.6. Quite the fuss and no sane person liked to wonder it. The easiest way to handle a shield was to either flank it or throw explosives, but watching the video for blast resistance, it looks like that path is going to be hard as well. Half the life, that's all a perfect nade did. And he didn't even shake. Human tank. Human tank. Watching the video, there is something else that is not mentioned in the text on Battlefield 2042 website. It looks like the bullets are ricocheting back, hitting the shooter. The shield that absorbs bullets is annoying and a pain to deal with, but a shield that reflects the damage back to you, I'm a bit lost for words here, honestly. Next is Criminal Emma Sundance Rosier. Her speciality is smart explosives and her trait is the super cool wingsuit. Smart explosives is a very broad description, and as DICE describes it as everything from scatter-nades to microdrones, it isn't exactly narrowing it down. I'm suspecting that these microdrones are going to inherit the throne currently owned by Fliegerfaust in Battlefield 5 as the pilot nemesis. She can deploy a wingsuit instead of a parachute if needed, which makes me think that maybe it's not that passive of ability in the end. Anyhow, the wingsuit is one of the early cool stuff that we got to see from Battlefield 2042, and seeing it here only keeps adding to my excitement. Konstantin Angel, also called Angel, is a trauma specialist that has loadout crate as his speciality. He keeps the squad provided with armor and ammo, and can also call in a beacon that allows swapping of loadouts. The plus system makes current loadout flexible, but changing the loadout takes it to another level. While this can be quite useful in Conquest, this is yet another thing that I think will thrive mostly in hazard zone. As a trauma specialist, he can revive allies with bonus armor. Finally, we had the last specialist promised at the release of Battlefield 2042, Jisoo Pike. Her specialty is the MGX scanner and her trait is threat perception. This former Korean Spec Ops is the biggest source for the latest concerns regarding specialists in Battlefield 2042, mostly because of her EMGX scanner. So listen to this. EMGX scanner makes enemies visible even through walls. Yeah. As if spotting on the minimap wasn't enough, DICE gives up straight up wallhack. I guess you can see why so many players are yelling right now. Regardless of the situation, wallhack is usually quite a big thing, isn't it? Even if this one is pulsating and probably has some restrictions, well, it's hard to see how this is not OP. Her threat perception, however, isn't really something I'm too worried about. As you can see, it basically allows her to find the shooter when taking damage and return fire. As the marker usually is pretty good anyway, I don't think that this is something to get overexcited about. If it also spots for the rest of the team, or even the rest of the squad, then it will be really interesting. But otherwise, it's kind of meh. By now, you should know that some abilities are quite extraordinary. At least when you see them in the videos from DICE and when we read about their description. Especially MGX scanner seems OP as f***. Before we get ahead of ourselves, let's take a step back. For starters, why can't DICE just continue with the classes as before? There are several reasons to evolve the class system a bit. For starters, it has been evolving all the time. The class system last seen in Battlefield 5 is very different from, let's say, 1942. In Battlefield 5 you can choose your appearance however you want, you can choose between different weapons and gadgets available for that particular class, and you can choose between 2 different specialities per class. These in turn results in 2 passive effects, like running faster when low health or gaining more ammo when looting players. In 1942 all soldiers of a particular class looked exactly the same. Everybody got the same primary and secondary weapons, and you got the same gadgets. No special abilities whatsoever, and if I recall correctly, Battlefield 2 was the first Battlefield game where the same class could have different primary weapons, but the selection was scarce and everything else was still the same. Jumping back to Battlefield 2042, I guess they could have just continued with something similar to Battlefield 5, but regardless of how you view it, there are some upsides with having specialists. You can see what abilities a player has by looking at them. DICE can create narratives around the specialists, giving them a background story like Irish. DICE can create more unique skins as they are 100% fitted to the character, like elites in Battlefield 5. They can create something really cool for Dozer, without having to think about creating something similar in children's size for the Sundance. If done right, everything ties together to create a personality, almost a hero, though that would be kind of silly in a Battlefield game. We don't want to do heroes, we can however do Spec Ops. I have to apologize, some of those arguments are opinionated. But I mean, some may not want to have a story at all. Just let me shoot people, that's all I have dreamed about. Truth be told, for the normal all-out warfare, DICE could just have kept the class system as is. Even with specialists, each specialist has a class. Confusing? Well, it shouldn't have to be. DICE told you specialists were based on the old class system, didn't they? Rao and Pike are recon, Dozer and Sundance are assaults, and finally Angel is support. Think about it, all these make sense. So how is it at all different from the old class system? Well, the only true difference is that you can choose whatever loadout you want. Other than that, there is no difference, except that DICE went a little bit bananas with the abilities compared to, for instance, Battlefield 5, where abilities are quite forgettable. I don't even think all players are aware of their existence. But if we broaden our perspective a little bit, Battlefield 2042 comes with 3 different game modes after all. There is however only one that really makes sense, given the background story and the specialist: Hazard Zone. In the Hazard Zone all abilities make sense, and even having specialists at all makes sense. It's like operators in Warzone, heroes in Overwatch or Apex Legends, and so on. Now, I'm not sure if specialists is going to stick for the next Battlefield game. I don't think DICE knows for sure themselves. Not only does it rely on the success of Battlefield 2042, but it also depends on where the FPS world is going from here. What I am sure of is, however, that there is no way that the abilities are going to be balanced from start. Maybe they never will be, and that can actually be okay. I'm sure that DICE will try to balance both weapons and abilities after a while, when they see what kind of sorcery the broad layer base actually gets up to. But even so, the more weapons, vehicles and abilities they add, the harder it will be to balance. There will always be some that are more powerful than others, and there will always be some considered overpowered. The question is more about where DICE wants to go from here. Do they want to keep delivering new games with a few years in between, or do they want to keep at least parts of Battlefield 2042 alive for a longer period of time? If successful, Hazard Zone could be a more competitive game mode for Battlefield that keeps on living in a parallel universe next to coming generations of Battlefield. But then they will have to keep balancing the game, much like Overwatch and Warzone. To some extent it will happen automatically as they keep adding stuff. They will also have to straight up balance the game, which in effect will create different metas for different periods of time. So after all, is this worrying? In so many ways I would like to say no. I'm more excited to play Battlefield 2042, but I'm worried that DICE has f***ed up. I'm sure that things won't always be pretty, especially not at launch, but as painful as it is, I've grown accustomed to that behavior of new games. Not only Battlefield products, but basically all games. The good thing is that today it's easier to get a patch out there to fixing stuff. The bad thing is that not only developers are aware of that, but marketing and sales as well, which seemingly results in getting released then gets fixed. What is a bit worrying to me though is that the track record of keeping old games alive with fresh content hasn't really been that good for DICE. Also, at the moment DICE, Ripple Effect Studios, EA Gothenburg and Criterion are all helping out with Battlefield 2042. That's a massive effort to get the game rolling. Now that we have seen how different All Out Warfare, Portal and Hazard Zone are, it all makes sense, right? But what about the future? I can't imagine EA pushing all these studios to keep maintaining and developing Battlefield. My concerns aren't actually about the specialists and their abilities. For sure, I think it's going to need a few tweaks to work out as intended. Either abilities need to be buffed or nerfed, or maybe even remade in some cases. But that doesn't really make me worried. What does is the risk of yet another Battlefield game abandoned prematurely in favor of something new that is coming soon. Alright, now I've been babbling for all too long, so what do you think? Am I totally right, or do you think that I should get my medicine and get back to bed? Let me know in the comments below. I hope this video has been of use for you. If so, please consider subscribing so you get all my coming videos about Battlefield and more. Also, giving a thumbs up really helps. If not, I'd be happy to receive your feedback what could have been better, and it's okay to throw in that nasty thumbs down. As always, I appreciate your honesty.